Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi. Amma ba'du. I greet our listening audience. Assalamu alaikum. And welcome to our Thursday evening Quranic presentation. And today we're going to start on a series of presentations, comments from the chapter 25. We're going to go through chapter 25 of the Quran, not each and every verse, but they all connect. All the verses connect. But we're going through chapter 25 and comparing Ibn Arabi and Imam Dawudi Muhammad. We'll be looking at the two, looking at Ibn Arabi for the students, looking at the Arabic of Ibn Arabi, especially for the Mali students, and we'll also look at comments of Imam Dawudi Muhammad that kind of sum up what Ibn Arabi is saying in our comparison, the two minds. We're also going to take a look at the dictionary of Raghib al-Isfahani in the presentations, the keywords that we'll be addressing with each comment of the verse. Now, as students, you may want to go and look at chapter 25. Chapter 25, even though I put the key verse up, it may run into other verses, subsequent verses. So you may want to, you can do this before or after the presentation as a student to look at the other verses. So, we will begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. Now these presentations, I'm making them as a teaching, not a preaching, not so much prepared speech, what have you. So there may be a little jumping around, but as a teaching. This is chapter 25, verse 1. And the general translation, Tabaraka, we would say, blessed is he or that which Nazzala al-Furqan. He sent down, and this is the Furqan. Furqan, this is the subject that we're going to be discussing today. And this is the name of the surah. So throughout the whole surah, we come back, we're going to relate it to the idea of Furqan. It runs throughout the whole surah. Every verse in the Quran, it connects or is based upon the previous verse all the way through. Every chapter is consistent with the previous chapter. So this idea of Furqan will run throughout the chapter, but you have to think and reflect to see the connections. It's something that I'm going to offer the students to do as we go through the verses of this chapter, Furqan. And this idea of Furqan, I'm not going to translate it right now because we're going to look it up and see how it's commenting on and get the idea from the comments. But it's Ella Furqan. So he sent down the Furqan upon his servant that he will be lil alamina, to all worlds. dealing with intellects, knowledge. This is the same word we're saying systems of knowledge when we talk about the word. We're talking about the intellects of all worlds, animal world, insect world, of all creatures. Lil Alameen. Nadhiran as a warning. Yes. So the first step, let us take a look at the meaning given by a Ragib of Furqan. So the root letters, Fa, Ra, and Ka. Al-Farqu. Al-Farqu is the internal noun, we call it. The internal noun, and the meaning is going to be extracted from this internal noun. We get the root meaning. The root meaning from this noun, and then subsequent derivatives of farqu, the meaning will kind of stay with it. So, al-farqu, which is the word for Furqan, yuqaribu al-falaka. He said it is close to or is near to al-falaka. Al-falaka is to split something, to split or to separate. ولكن الفلك يقال اعتبارا بالانشقاق. But falqa, he's saying, it is said or spoken with in consideration of inshiqaq. Inshiqaq is another word for splitting or dividing or separating, what have you. But that's falak, he said. That's falak. Falak is associated with al-inshiqaq, another word for splitting, what have you. Then he says, but al-farqu, which is the word we're looking at, yuqalu i'tibaran, it is said in consideration bil-infisal. Al-infisal is also a word for separating, splitting, dividing. So we have words that are similar in Arabic. We have similar words here in Arabic. We have al-farqu, we have al-falqa, we have al-inshiqaq, and we have al-infisal. So al-infisal, al-inshiqaq, and al-falqa will give us an idea of al-farqu. Al-farqu meaning to be able to distinguish. We could say distinguish, to be able to separate one thing from another, so forth and so on. So Qala Ta'ala, he says the Most High, وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرَ. And when we farqa, when we separate it, we can say now, when we divide it, when we split by you, for you, al-bahra, the sea. This is the idea of farqu. So we get from it al-Furqan. So this will continue with Ragib. Ragib continues here. Yes. He says, well, Furqan is Kalamu Allahi Ta'ala, the speech of Allah. It's the speech of Allah, li farqihi, to his separating, distinguishing, we say, bayna al-haqqi wal-batili. So it's distinguishing between the truth and the falsehood. Fi al-i'tiqadi. In faith, we could say, in faith or in conviction. Yes. So this is, he's defining al-Furqan, truth and falsehood, which we're going to take a look as we go, especially with truth and falsehood. Wasitki, this idea of truth, wal-kadhibi fi maqali. So here we're talking about sitki. See, sitki is a kind of truth, and haqq is a kind of truth. But this haqq is the true reality, we would say. The true reality. Sitki is the truth and the lie in speech. So sitki is when you speak the truth or you say a lie. This truth is a reality. So when we talk about the true reality, to give a hint, and we may say it again, and what about it is, if we go back up to this verse here, for example, إِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرَ. If we think that the sea actually split, the Atlantic Ocean split, the Red Sea split, what have you, by the prophet hitting it with a stick, then, and we take that literally to be al-haq, then we don't have Furqan. Because if we take it to be literally, then it becomes al-batil. But if we take it as, which we're going to show later, as something that's speaking to, something that we see that's speaking to a higher reality, then we're talking about al-haq. And for the Khan, you have to know the difference between al-haq and al-batil. Yes, this is very important in what we're going to be saying as we go on. Here, we're talking about speech in terms of truth and the lie, knowing the difference. Because sometimes the saying is, sometimes the liar tells the truth. So you have to have for the Khan to know the difference between the lie and the truth. And we live in a society where lying runs rampant. We're inundated with lying, that we take the lie to be the truth. The American people lie all the time. All the time. Lying. Black, white, and different. Lie. All the time. In the speech. Religious people lie. All the time. But we can't distinguish the lie from the truth with religious people because we don't have the Furqan. What's solid? And I don't need to give examples. When you're teaching, I don't have to give you 4 quarters. I should give you 1 quarter. And if I give you 1 quarter, it should be enough in that 1 quarter that you can get the other 3 quarters on your own. Yes, I should have to give you 4 quarters. While you sit back in your lazy boy chair and sip on tea. No, you have to think. When you come to this presentation class, you have to think. And I'm going to try to go slow enough for you to think. And then go back and listen to the recording and then think some more and reflect on what's being said. So he says, what salih is good, goodness, what salih and bad. Good and bad. Being able to distinguish what's good and what's bad, feel mildly. In works, in deeds, in actions. What's a good action? What's a bad action? Again, in this society, it's easy to find bad behavior and actions that we take to be good. We praise bad actions. And sometimes we condemn good actions because we don't have Furqan. وذلك في القرآن والتوراة والإنجيل. And that is in the Quran. This idea of Furqan is in the Quran, it's in the Torah, and it's in the Gospel. For example, قال وَإِذْ أَتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ وَالْفُرْقَانَ. That we gave Moses the book and the Furqan and the ability to discern. I'm going to use the term. Discern in a broad sense. Yes. One thing you can't do and you don't want to do is try to split hairs between English words and Arabic words. English words is giving you an idea about this Arabic word. But we're going over a lot to help define this Arabic word. In the end, there may not be an English equivalent, an exact English equivalent. So in the translations, you get an idea about what is being said, because it may not be exactly equivalent. So you don't scrutinize the translations too much. Try to think and see it in the Arabic. Yes. A mistake we often make, condemning translations. No, we have to learn to read the Arabic for ourselves and see it. Like this alaf noon, it has a function here, which I'm not getting into the grammar today. It has a function here in this idea of Furqan. It says a lot. The word says a lot. But I'm going to use the term discernment. Distinguish, differentiate, discern. All of it wrapped in one. And again, Allah says in the Quran, Shahru Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. So the month of Ramadan, and even here, the month of Ramadan, I would say as a side note, we'll come back to it closer to Ramadan. This is a good time to mention it because we're not under the gun and pressured in terms of the month of Ramadan approaching and coming, and how do we determine the month of Ramadan. But in the Quran, when we talk about this subject of Furqan, we have calendar speech when we talk about Ramadan, and we have spiritual speech. And if you have Furqan, you would know the difference between Ramadan, the calendar, and Ramadan, the haqq, the true spirituality of the idea of Ramadan. Or else, you may be taking Ramadan as a falsehood in your perception. You're not saying on that. الذي is that which the Quran was sent down in it. Hudan as guidance for mankind and bayinat. Min al-Huda wal Furqan. See, now I don't want to take too much time, but I want to teach. I'm teaching. So for the Quran, here we can look at the Quran itself. When we look at this Quran itself, then we look at the key words here. The key words is bayinat, clarity. We can have defined for the Quran, guidance, have defined for the Quran, Quran, have defined for the Quran, Ramadan, have defined. This becomes the word field. WORDFIELD. Word field that we create, and in that word field, it gives us the conceptual idea of for the Quran, according to the Quran. And these are key words that we put together and seeing the conception of for the Quran. Yes. This is the reflection, reading Quran and reflecting, reading and reflecting. So now we go to Ibn Arabi. He's commenting on Tabaraka al-Ladhi. To this he says, that's to say, Takathara al-Khayra al-Ladhi. Since he says Tabaraka, so I will say Takathara. Meaning that here, Tabaraka he's saying, and we said blessed is he who. I gave the translation to that. But he is to say that abundance of good. He gives or blesses with the abundance of good. So he gives abundantly, we would say, plentifully, the goods of that which Nazala al-Furqan, which he sent down the Furqan. In the Furqan is an abundance of good. He says, what tazayada, and so this Tabaraka, he's saying is takathara, what? Tazayada. In terms of good. And tazayada is gradual. And he's actually also, he's referring to nazala. When we say nazala, it occurs gradually. It doesn't occur all at once. When we read inzala, like we say inzala has the idea of it coming down once. But nazala has it coming down repeatedly with intensity. So this idea here, we want to remember this key word here, tazayada. It's something that I want to come back to bring attention to. Tazayada. So we have takathara and tazayada. We have abundance, and this abundance comes gradually to man. And these are the blessings. Yes. And it's in the Furqan. We're talking about Furqan. So stick to remember the subject, Furqan. He says, because because the coming down, the ascending of Furqan, huwa izharu, it is the manifestation al-aqli, al-Furqani, al-mahsusi. It is the manifestation, the appearance, the visibility of the intellect, aql, al-Furqani, the discerning intellect. the differentiating intellect, the distinguishing intellect, el-mahsusi, the special, I'm going to say, the special discerning intellect. It becomes manifested when the Furqan comes down. Yes. Biyadihi, of his servant, by his servant, al-mahsusi, of his servant specializing or special servant, but something that's given special to his servant. Yes, we're gonna see as we go. Be in firadihi, we say by himself, or yes, himself, given to him individually, min jumlati al-alamina, from the whole world, all sciences, because we're talking about the intellect now. See, that's why al-alamin, systems of knowledge, but these systems of knowledge that's in the intellect of man, essentially. So you take all, which he's going to mention here, all of all the worlds, yes, it's given to his servant, this intellect, this distinguishing intellect is given to his servant, specifically, it's the deity by the preparedness, al-kamili, the perfect preparedness, saying that I'm getting from this that his soul has been prepared, his mind has been prepared, his soul has been prepared, his heart has been prepared to be the recipient of this kind of intellect. In terms of completeness, perfection, to perfect it. And this occurs in an abundance, and it occurs gradually. الذي, which lam yakun li ahadin, it should be li ahadin. Let me put the right mark here. Li ahadin mithlihi, meaning that no one else like him, which no one else has it like him. No one else is given this like him, his servant. فَيَكُونُ أَقْلُهُ, thus its intelligence. Let me get rid of this. So this, we would say, or his intelligence, his distinguishing and Furqani intelligence, it is this intelligence that's given to his servant. It is al-aqlu al-muhitu. It's a comprehensive intelligence. Al-musamma aqlu al-kulli, which is called the intelligence of the whole, the intelligence of all, the universal intelligence. Yes, which he's going to show. Yes, this we're talking about a Furqan. This distinguishing intelligence has been perfected in Muhammad the Prophet of all the worlds. Yes. al-jami'u li kamalati, and the comprehensiveness or the collection or the we could say the bringing it all together for the perfections of all intelligences. Yes. Trying to find another word. But this is the idea. Culminates, the culmination of all of the perfections in all of the intelligence. Make another. Yes. This is the idea. This is the first idea we want to get in the presentation. I'll go through and summarize. This is summarized. This is in Muhammad the Prophet. It culminates in Muhammad the Prophet, the perfection. It starts with Adam, but it all culminates in the intelligence, which is the intellect of Muhammad the Prophet and his followers, what comes after him. وَذَلِكَ إِنَّمَا يَكُونُ بِظُهُورِهِ تَعَالَى. And that is, it will be by his manifestation, Allah, by his manifestation. Now, let me say this is Ibn Arabi. A lot of people don't understand Ibn Arabi. And they criticize Ibn Arabi about a lot of things. And I believe it's mostly because they don't understand Ibn Arabi. So one of the things that we want to do, and even comparing, we're going to see as we go through this chapter, and as we're comparing Ibn Arabi with Imam W. Muhammad and their language, the language that they have been using, we'll see the similarities in their languages. And even in Imam W. Muhammad, we'll show where people had problems with his language because they didn't understand him. So there are times when he changed the language. He changed his language because it was giving people problems. So sometimes Ibn Arabi's language gives people problems because they don't understand Ibn Arabi. And the first thing is, when we're reading Ibn Arabi, we have to think of the internal man more so than the external man, the spiritual man, the internal, the true man. That will help. So we're saying by Allah becoming apparent, his appearance, his manifestation in madharihi, in its Muhammadi, in this place of manifesting himself. This is Allah, not Allah in the person. We're not speaking of Allah in the person, but we come to realize, we come to see the manifestation of the existence of Allah. Yes. Because we can't see Allah literally. We can't see Allah. Allah doesn't appear in any form. Even though we have people today think so. No. We're talking about the things that have manifest. And these manifestations points to Allah. We come to the conclusion that there is Allah and there's only one Allah. But what has been manifested in His creation. And this manifestation appears in Muhammad and in the followers of Muhammad. It appears gradually when we talk about the systems of knowledge. Yes. I hope I'm not confusing you. He says, Bijami'i, by all sifati, by all of his attributes. Yes. His attributes, qualities. His characteristics. See, we have the attributes of Allah, and we have names, the names of these attributes, the names of these qualities, and they're listed in the Quran. It comes through Muhammad the Prophet. That man also shares in these attributes, but Allah is the most excellent of all attributes. So this is the manifestation. What we're talking about, He manifests Himself. Al-Mafidi in the outpouring, we say in outpouring attributes. Ala Jamiri al-Khalaiqi, upon all creatures, ala ikhtilafi al-i'tidadihi, istidadihi, in all of their preparedness, the differences of all of their preparedness. All creatures have been given special qualities, special attributes, and they have been given perfection in these attributes, in these qualities. Yes. More so than man, physically speaking, let's say. The bee has been given a certain quality in his creation as a bee. And this perfection that he has is exemplified in the building of his house. Yes. So this intellect, we're going to say, this bee has been given an intellect, because there's an intellect in all the creatures. All the creatures have been given a certain intellect, even though we say they are functioning under instinct, nature instinct. Yet we see an intellect operating, manifesting itself in the bee, and how the bee builds its house. But this intellect that the bee has to build his house the way he builds it, which, go look it up, man, he can't build a house like that at first. But gradually, we come to this word now, gradually, man is given the intellect to also eventually build a house like or better than the bee. Allah has given creatures. We see when we study the creature flying, and we study the creature flying as a science, belongs to Alameen. Then we see a certain intellect that's operating in that creature flying. He has been given that special quality by Allah to fly. Though to us it appears as though his body is heavier than the air and he shouldn't be able to fly. But he's given that special quality in his intellect to fly. But man doesn't start out flying, but gradually, man can learn to fly his intellect. Because of man's intellect, he can begin to fly faster and higher than the bird. He has given the eagle a certain perfection in sight, that he can go high up in the sky and see down on earth very clear. This quality is in the eagle. That if man goes up there, he can't see as good as the eagle can. No. But with the intellect of man, he can devise an instrument with his intellect. He can extend his physical extremities to create an instrument that he can see far, far beyond the sight of an eagle, and more perfected than the sight of the eagle because of his intellect. You see, this intellect, this Mohammedan intellect, we call it today, in modern times, comes after the Quran is revealed. All of it culminates. All of these excellent perfections and qualities that we see that comes from Allah, that's shared in his creatures, are all perfected with Muhammad the Prophet and what comes after him. Yes, so that the intellect, gradually, not all at once, gradually. Yes, I hope you understand. But those are only given what they can handle, as we say, because Allah does not burden any intellect, any individual intellect. He does not burden any intellect beyond what it can bear. This is what we mean by they're prepared. And Muhammad has the most perfect, complete prepared intellect of all individuals. Yes. When expressed to others gradually, we see how this intellect comes to fruition, comes to complete, comes to perfection, greater perfection from Muhammad the Prophet. Prayers and the peace be upon him. Yes. And in all knowledge and science, the highest form of knowledge and science that we get, the higher we get, the more we're able to come to bear witness to his divine names, his divine attributes, his divine qualities that we find in man in creation. وذلك الظهور هو تكثر الخير وتزايده. We said, and that manifestation we're talking about, it is the abundance of good and its graduation. It's gradually occurring. It's graduation. الذي لم يكن which as yadu, a greater graduation, I'm using the term, maybe the wrong term in the wrong place, gradually, nor a greater abundance is not able more so than him, than it. It's coming from someone like Muhammad the Prophet. وَلِذَلِكَ, and to that, or likewise, he says, لِيَكُونَ لِلْعَالَمِينَ نَذِيرًا. in order that he be to all worlds of science, to all creatures, looking at it scientifically in the intellects of all creatures not here on, that he be a warning, a warner, because it's in Muhammad the Prophet. But we don't get to see it right away. We get to see it gradually. It appears gradually. And it appears in abundance. Yes. The modern science that we are enjoying today comes as a result of the revelation of the Quran. Yes, we could trace this in history. So he's going to comment on this. He says, that's to say, ala al-umumi, upon the universals, al-umum, universals. فَإِنَّ كُلَّ نَبِيٍّ, surely every prophet, غَيْرِهِ, other than him, كَانَتْ رِسَالَتُهُ مَخْصُوصَةً. So every prophet, other than Muhammad the Prophet, his message, risala, his message was special. But only to be manasaba isti'daduhu, only those who his preparedness was related. Of the preparedness, his preparedness of the creatures was only related to that messenger in terms of what they were prepared to receive at the time that the messengers appeared. I mean, they had a message, just a particular message for, let's say, only their people, their time. Because at that time, perhaps, they were not prepared to receive the universal message. The prophets. Yes, including Abraham. What they received was universal, but they did not receive it in total. Amun, meaning the whole, the fullness, completeness. So he says, when we said latuhu, so his message, alayhi salam, upon him the peace, this is Muhammad the Prophet, ammatun likulli, it's universal for all. It comes complete. Yes, so when we say, وَهُوَ بِأَيْنِهِ مَعْنَى, then it is none other than the meaning of when we say Khatmi an-Nabuwati, the seal of the prophets. I hope you're following the logic. Yes, it all culminates in Muhammad the Prophet, and he becomes the seal of all the prophets. Yes, and we know the story, the tradition, the hadith that's given that he led them all in prayer. Abraham and all. He led them in prayer. And we can talk about the meaning of prayer. Not just the ritual prayer, but the el-haq, the universal concept of prayer. He led them. If you follow the logic now. وَمِنْ هَذَا, and from this, تَبَيَّنَ, it becomes clear in the existence of his ummah, in existence of his community, and his community is all the intelligence. We could say the scientific intelligences that follow in the usage of the Quran to advance themselves. I'm stretching the ummah. It's just not those that take shahada. We're talking about the intellect. We're talking about man in his internal self, not the external self, not the gang member. We're talking about the man, the spirituality of man. This is how Ibn Arabi is speaking. So the ummah, the people that follows Muhammad the Prophet, which is throughout the whole world, whether they declare it or not, we say it's Khayra al-Ummah. It's the best of all communities. Yes. And we see why from what we have been saying today. I hope you understand. This is all due to the Furqan. Yes, the Furqan. Now, let us look at, we can sum this up from Imam W.D. Muhammad to look at the contrasting view. Now, there's more that can be found from the Imam than what I'm showing. I'm just getting one concept or idea here from him. He says the Quran is clear guidance or clarity that serves to make clear true guidance for the Quran now from false guidance, and not only to distinguish truth from falsehood, but enables us to also distinguish the features of the guidance. So for the Quran is not only, it's a distinguishing intellect, a discerning intellect that not only allows us to discern truth from falsehood, but also discern the features within the guidance itself. He says the Quran is plain language that we all can understand, and metaphorical language, which is a more ambiguous language that requires interpretation. And I'm going to add, and comment. And to interpret the ambiguous language requires a special kind of discerning intellect, if we may say. It requires Furqan. So Moses is given a book of his time, of his people, and the Furqan of his time and his people. But Muhammad is given the Furqan of all, universal, of all people. Yes. And you have to have it. Even when reading the Quran, you have to have Furqan because of the language. You have a metaphorical language. The plain language, getting back to Imam W. Muhammad, is that which has been made plain and very rational so that you can easily follow it logically. That's the plain language. But metaphorical language is what is given as a resemblance, not the real thing. So we talked about the sea, the battle, the sea, the splitting of the sea. The sea is a resemblance. It's given in the language of Quran as a resemblance to something. It's not the real thing. It resembles the real thing. When you read it, yes, your imagination tells you it's real. It's so real when I read it. Because if we don't have the Furqan, we would take it as real. But it is not the real thing. That's what we have to learn. Not only when you read Quran, you have to know what's plain language, and then you have to know what's metaphorical language. And in the metaphorical language, you have to be able to discern between the real and what is not real. Because if you take that is not real to be real, it becomes a falsehood. And then another part of the idea we got from Ibn Arabi is we find that the attributes for Allah's mercy, justice, etc. All of these are the attributes of Allah that can be expressed by human beings are all expressed by Muhammad the Prophet. All of these attributes can be expressed by human beings and have been expressed in every prophet, but not all of them at one time. All of them are expressed by Muhammad the Prophet, and these names have been recorded in the Quran. You can see contrasting the idea of Ibn Arabi and Imam W.D. Muhammad. I thank you for your time. I pray that you have benefited from today's presentation. We will continue with chapter 25 next week, inshallah, God willing. I greet you again. Assalamu alaikum.